Okay, I think we're by the BeShalom in the paragraph of Ha'inyan. So the Maimer was speaking about Yivarechucha, v'chasidecha Yivarechucha. So on the one hand, we're talking about a level where there's only Haidah, there's only acknowledgement, Yiducha, which is Eirin Seif Shalamayla Mishtalshlas, something that's higher than it's on page Kufyat Ches. I think you have the same sefer as me. Kufyat Ches, the bottom line, BeShalom. So he said the level of Yiducha is Eirin Seif Shalamayla Mishtalshlas. It's a level where there could be no grasping, no understanding, there's only acknowledgement. Yiducha, Haidah. And that level that's higher than Ishtalshalos, the Chasidecha, the Chasidim Yivarechucha, they draw it down into Malchus in a way of bracha. So the Maimer was explaining this Maila of Yivarechucha and Eirin Seif Shalamayla Mishtalshalos, that's the combination of bracha and tefillah. Tefillah usually has the advantage that it brings down from Eirin Seif Shalamayla Mishtalshalos. Yehi Ratzin, it can create a brand new Ratzin that wasn't existing previously. However, Tefillah is not certain. It's requesting, it's asking for it. Bracha is certain, it draws down, it gives, but it can only give something that's existing in the Sheirish. And a combination of bracha and Tefillah is Chasidecha Yivarechucha. And the examples of that was a tzaddik. He said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Gezer and tzaddik mevatel. The tzaddik brings a brand new ratzin and he does it in a way of bracha. And he brought that this is what we find, the Maimer says, that this is what we find that tzaddikim accomplished through Torah. That Rab Shimon Bar Yochai says in the Zohar, caused it to rain, even though it was a ratzin chadash, there was a decree that there should be a drought. So bringing about rain was a ratzin chadash, and he did it not by a tefillah, not by asking for it, but by saying a drush on Shira Mailis, by saying Torah. So the accomplishments through Torah are a combination also of bracha and tefillah. It's a ratzin chadash that's brought not by request, but by demand.
There's no bracha in studying Torah. You're just studying and learning and talking.
A bracha, the Torah accomplishes a bracha. He brought the example of Shimon Bar Yochai's Torah brought about rain. And it brought about rain. It didn't ask for rain, it forced the rain. So now, in this paragraph of Inyan, the Rebbe was explaining why does the Rebbe Rashab specifically take this example of Rab Shimon Bar Yochai to give an example of an accomplishment through Torah that's bringing a new thing, a new ratzin, and nevertheless it's in a way of tzivui, it's by force. Seemingly there's many examples. Many stories of Tanaim and Ameiraim who did wondrous things through their Torah, which is all something new that's in a way of bracha. So the Rebbe gave the example of Rav Pinchas ben Yair, that it says in the Gemara, Rav Pinchas ben Yair was obstructed by the river when he was going to do Pidyon Shvuyim, and with the koyach of his Torah, he forced the river to split. And that was something that was not allowed for by the sheirish of the river. And nevertheless, he did this with his koyach HaTorah. So what's special about the example of Rab Shimon Bar Yochai over all the other instances? And that's what we're concluding now. We're bringing this. Why is the example of Rab Shimon Bar Yochai unique? And therefore, the Rebbe Rashab picked specifically that. BeShalom, this is an idea that's found a lot also in the Lag Baimer Mamarim. Shahachidush bazeh. The chiddush in the fact, Rab Shimon Bar Yochai himshich yiridas keshamim al yidei amiras Torah. The chiddush in Rab Shimon Bar Yochai causing it to rain through saying Torah, through saying a drush on Shir HaMailes, like we said before. Al legabe hameifsim ha'atzumim sha'asu kama tanam v'ameiraim al yidei esek ha'Torah shalahem. Why is this special? Why is this different than the many stories of many Tanam and Amiram who did wondrous things that we learn about in Gemara and in Chazal that was all through Torah, like the Alter Rebbe explains, like we said? The difference is as follows. Shashini ba'olam sha'asu kala Tanam v'Amiram. The differences, the changes that were brought about by other Tanam v'Amiram although they did combine the two different aspects, they were a nu ratzin, they were a erin seif shalamayla mishtalshus, and they were b'derech tzivui, but it was a yidei hatzivui v'hagzeira shalahem. It was direct. Rab Pinchas ben Yair commanded the river to split. It wasn't in an indirect way. He had to tell the river, I need you to split, and you have to split. Okamei Rab Pinchas ben Yair, like that example that we brought, Rab Pinchas ben Yair, Shetziva, v'gazer, he commanded and decreed al anar, sheyachlek al meimav, you must split, you must part. V'achidish di yiridas matar. Al yidei amiras teira de Rab Shimon bar Yochai, the chiddush specifically of Rab Shimon bar Yochai was he didn't have to tell it to rain. He didn't have to decree that it should rain. On the contrary, he said a drush, he said words of Torah that seemingly weren't related with rain. And nevertheless, his Torah, even though it didn't contain a directive that it should rain, had the effect of bringing about a Erin Seif Shalamayla Mishtalshlus in a way of bracha. Dagam shebehadrush sha'amar. Although in this drush, in this Torah that he said, Loi hoyat sivui klal, gam loi beremes, there was no command, no decree that it should rain, not even a hinted one. It didn't even allude to the idea of raining. Mikol makim, nevertheless, ayidei amiras Torah shaloi nasa yiridas kasham. And nevertheless, it still brought about the result, and in a way of tzivui, in a way of bracha, in a way that was with certainty, that didn't leave a possibility that it shouldn't happen. So there was something unique, which we'll understand more later in the Maimer, something special about the way it was done by Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, even more than the other Tanam and Amiraim, and therefore the reason why the Rebbe Rashab chooses specifically this example is because it's this Maila that we want to find by Chasidecha. According to this we can say, that the Maimer brings. When he wants to give another example from Torah of the combination of bracha and tefillah, Hadugma, he brings the example, the Yeridas Keshamim al Yidei Amiras Torah, of how Rab Shimon bar Yochai brought about the rain through Torah, Hu B'chtei L'Rames, this is to teach us, to hint us, Shal Derech Zehiyash, Mamshacha Shaydei HaBracha, the Chasidecha Yevarachucha. That also the Chasidecha, that their Yevarachucha is a combination of bracha and tefillah. They're bringing down Erin Seif that's higher than Ishtalshus. In a way of bracha, it's not like it was by the other Tanam, it's specifically the way that it was by Rab Shimon bar Yochai, and the explanation for this will come up much later in the Maimer. What? Rab Shimon bar Yochai is greater, but we didn't really explain why it's greater. We just said it seems to be a bigger power, because he didn't have to go and say what he wants, and it caused it to happen. And later we'll...
People like us, rain...
What?
Yeah, speak to people like us. Rain is not changing anything. Splitting the sea is a big deal.
That he's not talking about that difference, but in truth, rain is it says the mafteach that the Eibishter didn't give over to anyone else. It says about rain. It doesn't say about splitting the sea.
Rain is good.
But kriya. But here we're talking about the difference, not in regards to nas, in regards to Umevar behamaimer. So now going back to explaining this tremendous accomplishment, Chasidecha Yevarachucha, of bringing down Erin Seif L'mayla Mishtalshus into Malchus. He's going to explain, the Maimer explains, Hashaychas the Yevarachucha, the Shaychas of this bracha, drawing into Malchus. Hamshacha b'Malchus Malchus Kai Erin Seif L'mayla Mishtalshus. L'Chasidecha, how does this connect specifically with Chasidecha? Later we'll explain more in detail what exactly are Chasidecha. But now in general it describes them as Chasidecha, the ones who are connected with Chesed. The ones who practice Chesed are the ones who have this accomplishment of bringing down Yevarechucha de bracha into Malchus. Why Chasidecha specifically? We could understand this al pi ma shekasav haRambam, based on what the Rambam says. Hachiluk bein Chesed l'tzedakah. So we have to understand first the advantage of Chesed to understand what's special about Chasidecha. So the Rebbe Rashab explains that based on what the Rambam says about the difference between Chesed and tzedakah. He says, "The tzedakah hu inyan hayeshem." Tzedakah is what's right. Tzedakah milashon tzedek v'yeshem. The famous sikha of the Rabbi, where the Rabbi says the three different words that are mistranslated. One of them is tzedakah. Tzedakah is not that you're doing something extra, you're doing a favor, you're giving charity. He says, no, tzedakah, the root of the word tzedakah in Lashon HaKodesh is tzedek. It's what's right. Tzedakah is what's justified. It's not. And the Rambam, he says, that defines what's given in a way of tzedakah, is you're given what's right to give, which means lases l'kol echad kefi harayilei. Tzedakah implies giving to a person what is just for him to get, what he's supposed to get, what's proper for him to get. It's tzedek v'yeshem. Whereas chesed hu aflogas hatayv laheitiv yeser mimashehu rai. Chesed, which doesn't come from the root tzedek v'yesher, chesed is more than that. Chesed is an expression of my kindness when I'm giving more than what a person is deserving, more than what he's meant to have. Haflogas hatayv, giving a greater abundance of good. Umevi behamaimer, so the Maimer explains this. What is this based on? This is what the Rambam says. He's going to give now a mucker for the Rambam, that tzedakah is only giving what a person is meant to get. The mashkas of Harambam, that the Rambam says, tzedakah hu hashpa l'kol echad kefi harayilei, that tzedakah is to give everyone what he's meant to get, what he's fit to have, is kameshikasav gabe mitzvah. Tzedakah is based on the Gemara that says on the pasuk. The pasuk says about tzedakah to give dei machseirei asher yechsarlei, enough for what the person is missing. That's how the pasuk defines tzedakah. Va'amr Razal, says the Gemara, that tzedakah, from this we learn that dei machseirei, give the ani, the poor person, what he's missing, what he's lacking, machseirei. Ve'iyata mitzuva la'ashrei, you don't have to make him rich, you have to give him only what he's missing. So from this, says the Maimer, from this the Rambam derives that tzedakah is giving a person only what he's meant to get. The Gemara itself says you don't have to make him wealthy. To give him wealth is maybe something that wasn't meant for him. You're giving him machseirei, something that's fit for him, that's tzedek v'yesher, that considered something that he's lacking if he doesn't get it from you. Therefore, from this we understand the next step. Anything that a person is lacking, that's all included in tzedakah. Anything up to ashiras, up to wealth, is included in tzedakah. V'chesed shu aflogas hatayv. Chesed, that the Rambam says, is giving abundant good. Laheitiv yeser mimashehu rai, giving the person more than what he's deserving, supposed to get. Hu hashpa beriboy l'mayla mimilei achsar, and is giving more than what the person is lacking, over and above that. That's ashiras, to actually provide him with wealth, to make him wealthy. So this is the simple meaning of tzedakah and chesed. And now we'll say, how does that translate in ruchnius, in oilamis? So this, if we translate this l'mayla in the ruchnius to oilamis, that we're talking about what the chasidecha are giving to koi, to sfiras hamalchos, b'amshacha to sfiras hamalchos, and bringing down alikus, and bringing down higher eris into malchos. There's the two inyanim, two ways that correspond with tzedakah and chesed. Giving malchos what it's lacking, that would be called tzedakah. Chesed, which is the accomplishment of chasidecha, the ones who are doing chesed, would be to give malchos something that's more than just what it was lacking. Give it ashiras. And now we're going to try to find, what does that mean? What is malchus lacking, that would be the ashpa beruchnis of tzedakah to malchus. It says, al derech zehu l'mayla, b'amshacha b'sfiras hamalchus, inyan hatzedakah, hu amshachas hagili sheshayich l'malchus. Any gili alikus that belongs, so to speak, to malchus, that belongs in malchus, is something when that's not present, we would consider that malchus is lacking it, that malchus is missing, it doesn't contain what it's meant to have. That would be included in a ruchnius ticket stuck. To give sfiras hamalchus, That's the root of everything in the world. Whatever Malchus is meant to have, and without that it's lacking, that's all the ruchnis, the kitstaka, if that those levels of elikus would be drawn down into Malchus. And we're going to explain now exactly what that means. That would be filling up the void, so to speak, in Malchus. Okiyadua, what is Malchus lacking? We have a pasuk for that. Okiyadua, be'inyan ata asisa es hashamayim. We say in Vayevarech David, Ata hu havaya levadecha. You are Hashem alone by yourself. Chassidus explains that these three words, Ata hu Hashem, the way they're levadecha, are three levels of elikus that are lifnei hatzimtzum. Levadecha, where elikus is alone, before there's even the first beginnings of ishtalshlos of elamis. After that it says, after the level of where Hashem is levadecha, where He's alone, there starts a new process of creating the elamis. It says in Vayevarech David, Ata asisa es hashamayim v'sa'aretz shmei hashamayim v'chol hashbem haaretz v'chol asher alah. Again, a second level where Ata, you Hashem, are creating the worlds. In the pasuk, the second Ata asisa es hashamayim v'sa'aretz, is written without a hey. The first Ata says with the Ata hu Hashem levadecha is with a hey. The second Ata is without a hey. Says in Chassidus that when a elikus comes to be a sisa es hashamayim, basically to come down and create elames, it's through becoming a chisaron. It has to be missing 5 levels. Where is the Hisavas Elamis coming from? From Sfiras HaMalchus. Malchus is what comes down into Biyah, is the source of Brias Elamis. Malchuscha Malchus Kol Elamim. For Malchus to come down and create a new world, to create Elamis, it has to first be missing. Because the first condition, the criteria for creating Elamis, is there has to be a Helam, the Giluyim of Atzilus have to be hidden. Malchus is Mailim, it covers over everything. That's why Malchus is compared to the Yam, to the ocean, to the water that covers over everything in it. And therefore, through hiding everything above, it's able to come down into Biyah and be a source for a lower Elam. So specifically, there are 5 levels that are the components of Atzilus that have to be lacking, that have to be concealed in Malchus to enable Malchus to come down and be a source for a new world. And therefore the Ata, Sisas, Hashamayim, Vesarza, Shmei Hashamayim is missing a hey to show on the 5 levels that are missing in Malchus. That's what we're going to spell out now. It says, Ata Kiyadua Be'inyan. Ata Sisas, Hashamayim, Vesarza, Ata sisas hashamayim, shmei hashamayim v'chol tzavo hamaretz v'chol shlah. That Ata sisas hashamayim, the second Ata in Vayevarech David, says Ata chaser hey. The word Ata is missing the hey. Dezeh shahamalchus nasis moker lahavis ha'elames. When Malchus comes down from being havaya levadecha to become a sherish, a moker, a source for the elames, Asisas Hashamayim, that's what we're referring to in this phrase. Ata Asisas Hashamayim, Shmei Hashamayim v'chol. Hu al yidei shenechsru, that's enabled through that Malchus has to be lacking. Nechsru mimena is missing 5 different components. Hey partsufim, 5 faces, 5 levels of Atzilus, which are Keser, Chachma, Bina, Za, Umalchus. That's basically the basic components of Atzilus. Keser, Chachma, Bina, Za, which is the 6 Sfiras and Malchus. So when those 5 Sfiras, that those are the Eires of Atzilus, those are all the way Elikus is felt in Atzilus, when they're lacking, so basically the whole Gilui of Atzilus is lacking. And only then can Malchus come down and become the beginning of a new reality, which is going to be Biyah, or the further Elamis. V'zeh nishar, what remains after the chaser hey, after the 5 levels, the 5 components are all lacking, what remains, because we said Malchus is also missing. So what's going on if we took away even the Malchus? Shenishar hu rak chitzenius ha-Malchus. What's left over is not even Malchus, it's the chitzenius of Malchus. Malchus to Malchus. The Malchus of Malchus. The basic sphere of Malchus, all the spheres, and even Malchus Atzilus are missing. Pnimius Malchus, which is Malchus, the way it still is some gilui of Atzilus, some feeling of Atzilus has to also be missing. The Chitzenius of Malchus, Malchus to Malchus goes down into Biyah. So Malchus, the way it is in Elames, is lacking. It's an ani, it's poor. It's lacking specifically 5 possessions. 5 components, which is the hey of Ata, which is Keser, Chachma, Bina, Zohar, Malchus of Atzilus.
Why?
What?
Why is it lacking?
Why is it lacking them? Because in order for it to achieve this mission to come down and make new Elames, the Elames, what's the meaning of Elames? Elames starting from Bria. It has to be a Metzias. It has to be a Yesh. It has to be an independent entity. To be an independent entity, the first criteria is you can't feel Elikos. We feel that we exist because we don't feel the Eibishter. If we would feel the Eibishter, the way it's felt in Atzilus, then we don't exist. So Malchus has to be like...
the Chesronon in order to come down.
Right. In order to create...
Because we got to fit it to say yourself.
Right. But nevertheless, these components all belong to Malchus. They're roy to be in Malchus. And therefore, if they could be, once Malchus created the worlds, they can be brought back down into Malchus. And when they are brought back down into Malchus, that's tzedakah. That's giving Malchus what it's deserving.
You read the Sri Chaliyah.
What?
You read the Sri Chaliyah.
You just say Chaliyah. And what we're giving in Malchus, when we bring them down, is Malchus's deserving possessions. So tzedakah beruchnius is being mamshech into Malchus, all of the areas of Atzilus, Keser, Chachma, Bina, Zohar, Malchus. Ve'inyin ha-chesed, now then there's chasidecha. What would be the chesed? What would be making Malchus wealthy? What would be giving Malchus areas that are more than what it had any connection to ever? Hu amshachas gili shelemayla mishaychas lemalchus shenimshach b'malchus. To give into Malchus an air that it never had a connection, which is going to have to be higher than Keser. Because Keser, we said, is the first level of what was the 5 components that are shaykh to Malchus. What's higher than Keser? Eirein Seif Shalamayla Mishtalshalos, because Keser is the first uppermost part of Ishtalshalos. So we see already, even till here, we're going to elaborate on it more, that Chasidecha, by very virtue of being Chasidecha, that their connection is with Chesed, their idea is to give what's higher than what was deserved. By definition, that means what they're going to give Malchus is more than what Malchus had a prior connection to. What is that? That's Eirin Seif Shalamayla Mishtalshalos, because anything after that is Malchus's tzedakah. This is also what we find, what Chazal say about a chassid, that Ezehu chassid ha-mischased im koinei. Who's a chassid? Chazal, the one who does chassid im koinei, with his creator, with the Eibishter. Umefarish b'tikunei zeir, the tikunei zeir says, what's im koinei? Im koinei means im kan delay, with his nest, with the nest of his creator. What are these 2 levels of koinai and kandile? It says koinai, his creator, but it's not koinai. Koinai literally means his acquirer, Miloshin Kinyan. Who is our acquirer? Who is our creator referred with the Loshin koinai? Who's Zah? That's Zah Atzilus. Why Zah Atzilus? Because the Eilam Atzilus is called a Kinyan. Ki Atzilus nikra Kinyan. Chassidus, it says when we speak about the term Kinyan describes something that didn't change, it just passed ownership. When you acquire something, it means it was mine. The same exact thing as it is now yours. It didn't change in a Kinyan. It just passed. That's what Atzilus is. Atzilus, there's no change in the air. The Gili Alikus in Atzilus is just like before Atzilus, except that it went from Eilames to the Eirin Seif Shalamayla Atzilus, and it became Eilam Atzilus. In Bria, which is Yesh Meyayin, there's already an existence, that's considered a change. And that's why Atzilus is called Kinyan. That's why we say Baruch Eisech, Baruch Yetzrech, Baruch Beirech, Baruch Kenech. Eisech is Asiya, Yetzrech is Yetzira, Beirech is Bria, Kenech is Atzilus. Kenech is Atzilus, because Atzilus is a Kinyan, it's just moving over. Since Atzilus is called Kinyan, so when we say Mischasedim Kainai, who's Kainai? Who do we describe as our acquirer? Is Zad Atzilus is the basic end of Atzilus. V'zahu Seif Atzilus. So Kainai refers to Zad Atzilus. And the Tikkun Zeir comes and interprets that and says, what do we mean when we say him Kainai? More specifically, Kandile, the nest of the Eibishter, Kandile Hua Malchus. K'mesha Kasa B'Pardes Shah Malchus Nikras Kan. Pardes, it says in Kabbalah, the Malchus is called the Kan, the nest. That's kind of the dwelling place, the housing for all the higher spheres. So the Tikkun Zeir is saying, what is the Aveda of a Chassid to do Chesed with Malchus? In Kandile, he's doing Chesed with the nest, which is Malchus. What's the Chesed v'inyan ha-mischased in Kandile? What's the specifics? What is this Chesed that's being done with Kandile, with Malchus, which is called the nest? Hu shemamshech b'malchus gili er chadash. Is like we said, like every Chesed. What is Chesed? To give something that's completely new that would be considered wealth, because it's not what the one person was meant to have. Something that's shalamayla meha'ir shenistalik mimena. Something that I had and I lost is just being replaced. It's not ashiras. Chesed has to be to give more than that. Aflagas ateva chesed, to provide ashiras, to provide wealth. What's the wealth that we can give to Malchus? Something that Malchus never had before, never had a connection with, is something that's higher than Keser, which is what specifically Pnimis HaKeser, something that's higher than Ishtalshus. So Be'inyan HaSfiris, in Sfiris, what is the Ashirus? What is the wealth that we can provide to Malchus? Who Pnimis HaKeser, Atik is the level of Atik. That's the level that's completely detached, removed from Ishtalshus. It's higher than Ishtalshus, higher even than the uppermost point of Ishtalshus that we were referring to before. When we said Keser, we were referring to Chitzenius HaKeser Arich. Atik is completely detached. And therefore that's an Ashirus, and that's what Mischased im Kandilei, the Chesed that's done with Malchus, is to bring down into Malchus Atik. Why Atik? Sham Shacha de Chitzenius HaKeser, to bring down any other level into Malchus, even Chitzenius HaKeser, which is Arich, who Bechlal Milei HaChisaron, that's not Chesed, that's giving it Tzedek, that's doing what's fair, what's right, because that's providing what it was lacking before, because like we said, the Hey of Ata is that it was lacking also Keser, which is Arich. The kivan sha'arich hu sheirish u'makar hanetzalim, since arich, chitzenius HaKeser, is the root for Atzilos, it's the sheirish of Atzilos, ela shehu makif aleim seviv, it's a makif tika sheirish, but it's a sheirish, it has a connection. So as long as Malchus is lacking the eir of arich, it's lacking something that has a connection. Hu bechlal ha'eir ha'shayich le'elameis, Malchus. It's a eir that has a connection with Malchus, providing that it's included in tzedakah. V'lachein kisha'eir ze einei mizgala b'Malchus, when the eir of arich, of chitzenius HaKeser, is not there in Malchus, hi chaseira, Malchus would be described as lacking. It's missing something that it's deserving, that it's meant to have. What's the chasidecha? Giving something beyond arich. Through giving arich, it's just fulfilling that void. Atik, Pnimius HaKeser, is described not as arich, which is the first sheirish, the root of the netzalim, the makif tika sheirish of netzalim, the netzalim of all the beings that came into existence. Atik, Pnimius HaKeser, is called Bechina Tachtena Shebematzel. That's the lowest level of Elikus. It's completely detached from Netzalim. It's not even the first Sheirish. And therefore, to bring down Atik into Malchus, that's Hashirus. This is Eirin Seif Shalamayla Mishaychas Leilames. This is the level of Elikus that has no connection at all with Eilames. Lemayla Gam Mishaychas Beifin to Seif Vumakiv, it can't even have an aloof connection. And therefore, to give Atik to Malchus, that's called Ashirus. Basically, so we explained with the Rambam's distinction between Tzedakah and Chesed, that chesed is to provide ashiras, to provide wealth. With that we understand more specifically why it's chasidecha, who are connected with chesed, who are mischasedim kandile, who do kindness, chesed, with malchus, that therefore their avodas to bring yivarechucha, with yeducha to bring the Eirin Seif Shalamayla Mishtal Shlas Atik into Koy, into malchus.